Good morning. Today we'll look at verse 8 of chapter 1 of the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, the oldest extant book on Jewish mysticism. Okay, so let me begin by sharing my screen. All right, and here we are, Sefer Yetzirah 1:8. As usual, I've got first the translation from the original Hebrew up here by the late Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, and then I have my translation. So Kaplan translates this as 10 sefirot of nothingness. Bridle your mouth from speaking and your heart from thinking. And if your heart runs, oops, there's a typo, return to the place. It is therefore written, the Hayot, living animals, running and returning. Ezekiel 1:24. Regarding this, a covenant was made. And my translation is 10 declarations of constraint. Restrain your mouth from speaking and your heart from thinking. And if your mouth runs to words or your heart to reflections, return them to their place. Thus is said, and the living beings, Hayot, ran and returned. Ezekiel 1:14. And upon this word, a covenant was cut. Okay, in these few brief sentences, we're actually being given a very powerful meditation technique, a very ancient meditation technique that is found right here in the Sefer Yetzirah. So let's break this apart a little bit more. Okay, as I just said, this passage gives ancient instructions on meditations. Furthermore, it's interesting that the author begins his work with such a topic. The message appears to be that in order to exert some control over your life and the circumstances that surround you, you must first be able to control your mind. Controlling the self is a prerequisite for engaging in the work of creation. Recall that in these Talmudic times, there were two forms of mysticism that were practiced that we know little about, the work of creation and the work of the chariot. Based on the Sefer Yetzirah, the work of creation involves how to do both something from something creation and something from nothing creation. And the work of the chariot, well, people usually interpret that today as meditative techniques, journeying through meditation. Okay, let's move on. Thus, enter into silence and restrain your mind from thinking. In biblical Hebrew, by the way, the words for mind and heart are the same. Furthermore, as your thoughts begin to pick up and stray, simply return them to their place. That is, return to that silent place within you where all things are observed and understood. I call this technique of meditation running and returning after its reference to Ezekiel 1:14. We often think of our awareness as running toward objects and then returning back into itself. But the higher reality is that there is no actual running and returning because the knower, the known, and the act of knowing all occur simultaneously. Like in a dream, there appears to be diversity, but all is made of consciousness. Nonetheless, another misspelled word, nonetheless, when beginning, think of returning your focus from the object back to that which perceives the object. Additionally, in Ezekiel 1:27, there's a marvelous verse containing the word hashmal that's often translated as either amber, electrum, or shining metal. And in Ezekiel 1:27, we read, and I saw something like the color of amber, like the appearance of fire enclosed around it. However, in the Talmud, the word hashmal is seen as a contraction of two words, one meaning to speak, another meaning to be silent. Thus, some translate hashmal as the speaking silence. Hence, the first step in your meditative journey is to make your mind silent. This is reminiscent of 1 Kings 19:12. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice, the speaking silence. Also, the word Hayot from Ezekiel's vision is very interesting. The word is generally translated as living animals, but if we spell it as Hayot, where it's, well, I have the Hebrew here. First, here's the original Hebrew for Hayot. I break it up into two and add a letter Aleph in the middle, so I get these two words, Hay and Ot, and that translates as living signs or signs of life. Right? Furthermore, the word for living also means running, and this is very telling, and it implies that the thoughts running to and fro in our brain are our signs of life. And certainly these days, we often take brain activity as an indication of life, and a person is not dead until they're brain dead. Anyway, but to properly meditate, we have to slow down those thoughts and let them help return us back to the source of life, back to the very center and source of awareness that we feel within. In addition to this, note that a covenant is an agreement or contract between two parties. And in the Sefer Yetzirah, the basic pattern of creation is always the presence of two opposites, coupled with a mechanism for communication between them. This communication is the covenant between the two opposites, and the covenant is also a regulatory mechanism that binds each side to certain agreements. Furthermore, in the passage above, the covenant is that which joins thoughts and perceptions, the perceived world, to consciousness, the unperceived world. Of course, the ultimate enlightenment is to understand that there is no difference between the two worlds. The seen world and the unseen world are never ever separated from one another. Like in a dream, all is fabricated from consciousness. And when you realize that the upper waters and the lower waters are both just water, then the separation disappears. When you can experience this, then all will be joined in unity. Until then, however, this statement will remain a meaningless mystery. So anyway, there you have it. This is the meditation technique. It's both simple and profound at the same time. You can do it with eyes open or eyes closed. Conceptually, we like to think of our attention always running toward these objects of perception. But then those objects disappear back into awareness. That is the return part. So all you need to do is calm yourself, center your awareness, however you feel centeredness to be for yourself. And then instead of focusing on the objects themselves or the thoughts themselves, focus on the awareness that they disappear into. Let each object, each perception, take you back to that point where it's perceived, to that point where it's known. As you do this, it's sort of like the energy, it moves sort of back into your spine, into some place which is the very center of you. And as you progress with this, you experience a greater sense of oneness and unity. And also love, because that is what unity is, after all. You can't have love without unity, and you can't be united unless there's love. Okay, so that's just it. Practice it and enjoy it. And now I'll stop my screen share. And that's it for today. So again, goodbye and shalom, and meditate well. And now I'll stop my recording.